Welcome to Half Sleep Historian, where history isn't shouted, it's whispered. If you're here to relax, unwind, or drift off to the forgotten corners of the past, you're in good company. Every story here is told gently, without rush. Just enough to keep your mind wandering while the rest of you settles down. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through time, consider giving this video a like. It helps others find it too. And if you'd like more sleepy history delivered right to you, feel free to subscribe. So grab a blanket, settle in, and let's begin tonight's slow story. And people genuinely believed putting bricks on their chests would somehow soothe the soul. You're in a cramped London boarding house. It's about 2:17 a.m. outside, though you can't be sure because your wind-up clock ticked its last tick sometime last week. The gas lamp on the corner outside hisses gently through your window, casting a sickly glow on the wallpaper. Green stripes peeling slightly near the baseboard. There's a faint smell of boiled turnip rising from the floorboards. Somewhere in the distance, a milk cart rattles. And you, well, you haven't blinked in about 4 minutes. Insomnia isn't new, of course, but in this time, this place, it's a particular sort of sleeplessness. The sort brought on by coal smoke, corsets, cold mutton, and unresolved anxieties about whether you remembered to polish your boots with enough vinegar-soaked breadcrumbs this morning. It's the kind of insomnia that leaves your eyes open, your thoughts racing, and your feet permanently too warm for the sheet but too cold for the floor. Your landlady insists that good Christians fall asleep by 9:30. You're now a certified heretic, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, what time it is, and how many bricks you're willing to stack on your chest in the name of historical experimentation. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You can't sleep again, not tonight, not after the day you've had. It started with a minor dispute over postage at the post office, ended with a pigeon relieving itself directly into your hat, and somewhere in between, someone said something unkind about your handwriting. You've had worse days, but not by much. And now, with all the city's noises subdued and the coal fire in your room burned down to faint orange ghosts, you lie there fully awake. Your blanket feels like damp burlap, your pillow smells like damp socks, and your mattress is either stuffed with old newspapers or something crunchier. You shift left, then right, then left again. Your joints crackle like distant musket fire. You try counting sheep, but all you get is one bored-looking sheep, chewing slightly out of sync with your imagination. He doesn't even jump the fence. He just stares, and then starts judging. It's about this moment, roughly 3 a.m., that you remember something, a story, or perhaps a warning. Your landlady once mentioned a Victorian recipe known to knock out even the most anxious of minds. Lettuce soup, yes. Lettuce. Apparently, boiled lettuce releases some kind of sleepy magic. Or maybe it just lowers your expectations so dramatically that your body gives up. Either way, you drag yourself from bed, tiptoeing across the freezing linoleum toward the communal kettle. It squeaks. You pretend it doesn't. In the kitchen, you find a limp head of lettuce, possibly yesterday's, possibly older. You boil it, slowly. The scent is green and wet and not promising. Still, this is the 1870s. Your options are limited. Soup turns out translucent, with a few sad leaves floating like forgotten laundry. You sip it anyway, cradling the warm tin mug like it holds something more meaningful than vegetable broth. It tastes faintly like boiled envelope, and yet a tiny part of you begins to relax. You stare into the middle distance. Somewhere a mouse coughs. Historians still argue whether lettuce soup was actually believed to cure insomnia, or if it was just a way to use up leftovers. Some medical guides from the period suggest that lettuce contains mild soporific properties, while others claim it simply distracts you from your crushing existential dread, which, frankly, would be useful either way. One Victorian pamphlet you vaguely remembered described lettuce as a calming influence on overexcited nerves, which is adorable considering what else they were using at the time: opium, belladonna, chloroform, and beer strong enough to put out fires. Compared to that, a bowl of boiled salad seems downright wholesome. You finish the mug. Your stomach gurgles politely. Still no sleep. The fire has gone out completely now, and your breath fogs faintly in the air. You consider adding socks to your hands or crawling inside the duvet like a particularly anxious snail. Neither plan works. You remain awake. This is where your thoughts begin to spiral. What if you never sleep again? What if you're stuck in this in-between state alive, but only technically? Your limbs feel both heavy and tingly, and your brain is starting to think in loops. You replay conversations. You invent arguments. You question the integrity of your bed frame. Eventually you lie back down and pull the blanket up to your chin. You close your eyes. You focus on your breath. You count exactly 6 inhales before your left leg twitches violently, startling the rest of your body into wakefulness like a fire alarm made of bees. You're still awake, and tomorrow you'll be expected to function like a well-laced Victorian citizen: upright posture, polite grammar, and no yawning before tea. Still, the lettuce soup wasn't the worst idea. At least now your belly's warm. Maybe the next method will be better. Asterisk. You're still awake by now. The room feels smaller somehow. The corners lean inward. The wallpaper looks vaguely accusatory, and the flickering gaslight outside is giving your shadow the proportions of a judgmental giraffe. You've fluffed your pillow 3 times, reversed your blanket orientation twice, and considered sleeping under the bed instead of on it because, frankly, that might be where your peace is hiding. And then, from the depths of your sleepless haze, you remember something: the linen weight method. It's not entirely clear where you heard about it, possibly a neighbor, possibly a badly translated French health manual, or maybe just your landlady after her 3rd sherry butt. The idea is simple. If your body refuses to rest, you trick it by gently simulating the feeling of being trapped, but in a comforting way. Victorian self-help guides refer to it as a soothing compression of the nerves achieved by placing several folded linen sheets over one's chest, shoulders, or lower limbs. A sort of early weighted blanket, if you will, though less therapeutic microbeds, and more whatever's clean and vaguely heavy. So, with the solemn air of a man performing a medical ritual, you stand, creaking, and gather your supplies. You fold your spare bed linen into a neat, if slightly lopsided, rectangle. Then you grab your heaviest book, something on moral hygiene or civic improvement, place it gently atop the pile. Still not heavy enough. You briefly consider your chimper pot. Mercifully, you don't follow through. Instead, you fetch a pair of fire bricks from beside the stove and wrap them in towels to prevent accidental bruising or dignity loss. And then, carefully, you lower yourself back onto the mattress, position the linen stack across your torso, and exhale. The sensation is strange. Not unpleasant, but definitely strange, like being hugged by a very somber librarian. Your limbs relax slightly. Your breathing slows, if only because any excess motion now feels like a personal insult to gravity. This was, apparently, an actual Victorian practice. Sleep guides of the time suggested that the feeling of firm restraint could lull the restless into slumber, particularly those afflicted with night disorders of the mind, which historians now believe may have included everything from anxiety to indigestion to having opinions. Some sleep manuals recommended weighting the feet specifically, claiming it helped calm the lower mind, which begs several questions, none of which you're currently qualified to answer. But Victorian medicine was full of these odd little rituals, and many of them shared a common theme: simulate the body's natural urge to give up. Force the nervous system into submission, either by confusing it, exhausting it, or politely squishing it. Your current approach seems to blend all three. You try to focus on your breathing again. Inhale, exhale, your chest rises, and the linen presses gently back down. Inhale, exhale. The fire bricks shift slightly, one corner digging into your ribs like a sleepy cat outside. The milkman clinks bottles onto the neighbor's doorstep. Somewhere across the alley, a baby lets out a cry that sounds, oddly, like sarcasm. Still, you remain awake. You try lying perfectly still, eyes closed, muscles limp, thoughts muted. But of course, the moment you attempt this, your brain decides. Now is the perfect time to remember the name of that actor who played King Lear in last year's theatre production. It starts with an H, or was it an M? You're wide awake again. Historians still argue whether the linen weight method actually worked, or whether it was simply a socially acceptable excuse to pile laundry on yourself and call it therapy. Some believe the pressure helped trigger a primitive, calming response. Others suspect it was more symbolic a way of pressing the day's expectations back into your body, smoothing out anxieties like creases in a cravat. Your landlady, for one, swears by it. She claims her late husband used to sleep like a baby once she'd pressed three-folded quilts across his knees and added a Castian skillet for balance. She also insists he once slept through a thunderstorm, a dogfight, and a minor chimney fire. So clearly something worked. Set up, possibly breaking a toe or denting your remaining dignity, so you lie still. You listen, you breathe, and then you sneeze. Violently, unexpectedly, the bricks slide. One thuds to the floor with a sound that's far too loud for such a polite hour. You wince. Somewhere downstairs, a floorboard creaks, and you're fairly certain you hear your landlady mutter something about midnight gremlins. You sigh. The linen weight method, though briefly comforting, has failed you tonight. Or perhaps your sneeze failed the linen method. Either way, you're now, once again, wide awake, slightly bruised, and acutely aware that there's a letter-scented burp lurking in your throat. Maybe it's time to try something stronger. Asterisk, it's nearly dawn now. Or at least, that's what your inner ear tells you. The kind of pale pre-dawn blur that leaks through London's ever-present fog. The kind of grey that looks like someone boiled an oyster and forgot to season it. The birds haven't started yet, but you can feel them judging you from the eaves. You're still very much awake. Your muscles ache slightly from the brick incident. Your ribs bear the light impression of a decorative quilt pattern. You've tried soup, you've tried linen weights. And now, after several desperate moments of considering whether to just staple your eyelids shut, you remember something else, the apothecary, not the boring, respectable one by the church. No, the other one, the weird one, the one tucked between the undertaker and the shop that sells wigs for horses, the apothecary with a sign that reads tinctures and tonics open until regret. That one, you pull on your cloak scratchy wool, the color of wet bark, and shuffle into your boots. They creak like scandalized grandparents. The street is mostly silent, save for the distant clop of a milk cart and a cat engaging in some kind of midnight duel with its own shadow. The shop's little brass bell tinkles as you enter. Inside, it's warm, dusty, and full of smells that can't be easily described, though fermented disappointment comes to mind. Shelves line the walls, stuffed with cork-stoppered vials, crumbly herbs, and labels written in an alarming mix of Latin, French, and extremely creative spelling. Behind the counter stands a man who might once have been a doctor, or possibly just lost a bet. His mustache twitches when he speaks, and his eyes have that unfocused glimmer that usually means he's either brilliant or boiling something illegal in the back. He greets you with a whisper and offers you the usual menu of Victorian sleep aids, laudanum, in a bottle shaped like a bishop's shoe. Tincture of valerian, which smells like warm socks. Opium pellets, recommended only for those with a strong stomach and no immediate responsibilities. A mysterious syrup labeled Dr. Proudfellow's Lunar Elixir, boasting restorative oblivion in just 3 spoonfuls. You raise an eyebrow. He raises both. You settle on something less bold, something called nerve drops, a concoction made from burnt sugar, orange peel, and a frankly suspicious amount of mercury. The label reads, for sleep, sadness, moral, panic, and ghost fright. Comforting, you're assured that only 3 drops are needed, which makes you instantly suspicious that 4 will kill you. Still, you tuck the bottle into your cloak, drop a coin into the man's outstretched palm, and step back into the night. Historians still argue whether these apothecaries were genuine attempts at medical aid, or just highly theatrical poison shops. Many treatments of the era blurred the line between cure and dare. After all, opium was as common as ginger, and doctors regularly prescribed chloroform for restlessness, as if knocking yourself unconscious with solvents was the same thing as restorative sleep. Back home, you place the little bottle on your nightstand and stare at it. Do you dare? You uncork it, waft the scent. It smells faintly of lemons, varnish, and despair. With the delicacy of someone unsure whether this counts as medicine or alchemy, you administer 3 drops beneath your tongue. Tastes like regret and celery. You wait. Minutes pass. The room feels the same. Your thoughts remain sharp enough to re-edit every conversation you've ever had, especially that one awkward moment with the grocer last Tuesday. You are, in short, still awake. Then, your jaw begins to tingle, not unpleasantly, but with the sensation that your teeth are remembering something traumatic. Your limbs start to feel heavier, not sleepy, exactly, but as though gravity has doubled its standards for the evening. You shift slightly, and the bed sighs beneath you, and for a moment, a brief, shimmering moment, you feel like sleep is near. That fuzzy, collapsing sensation starts to climb your spine. Your eyelids begin their downward journey, and then your stomach makes a sound that can only be described as internal mutiny. You bolt upright. There's a heat rising through your core that suggests you may have accidentally swallowed a battery. You rush to the basin. Nothing happens, thankfully. But now you're awake, alert, slightly buzzing, and full of questions. Namely, why is your left eyebrow twitching? You stare at the bottle. The apothecary did say just 3 drops. You wonder if he meant just 3 drops, ever, But here's the thing. This was the medical reality for a great many people. There were few regulations, no FDA, and even fewer ways of knowing whether your sleep syrup was going to ease your worries or induce mild hallucinations involving Queen Victoria tap dancing across your windowsill. Still, people kept trying, because when you haven't slept in 3 days, and the wallpaper starts whispering advice, you'll try anything. You climb back into bed, heart thudding a little faster than it should. You breathe, slowly, inhale, exhale. Maybe this time, you're horizontal again, tucked beneath a blanket that still smells vaguely like damp barley. The bottle of nerve drops sits on the bedside table like a smug little ghost. Your tongue is coated in whatever mystery metal it was laced with, and you can't quite tell if your heart is calming down or just adjusting to a new rhythm. But something has changed. Maybe it's not the medicine. Maybe it's the surrender. That peculiar, almost spiritual exhaustion that arrives only when you've tried everything and failed with dignity. Your eyes flutter a little. Not sleep, exactly, but the gateway to it. And then tick, tock, tick. No, you're not hallucinating. That's a clock, but not your clock. Yours hasn't worked in weeks. This sound is different, mechanical, deliberate, almost ... hypnotic. You glance around bleary-eyed, and then you remember. The man from the bookshop. The one who sold strange inventions, most of them involving brass gears and unverified promises. He called it a somni-oscillator, or maybe a hypnoclock, something with a very serious name, followed by a diagram that looked like a top hat mated with a metronome. You dig it out of the dresser drawer. It's about the size of a teacup and shaped like an angry bell. You wind it gently, and it begins to tick not like a watch or a wall clock, but slower, deeper, like the heartbeat of a very sleepy walrus. Tick, tock, tick. You set it beside your pillow, and against your better judgment, stare at it. The brass arm swings slowly, side to side, with a slight click at the apex of each arc. It's mesmerizing, like a pendulum trapped in molasses. The inventor, if you remember correctly, claimed the rhythmic motion would entrain the mind to a state of docile receptivity, a phrase that either describes hypnosis or the experience of listening too long. Sermons about proper marmalade. Victorians were, surprisingly, fascinated with mechanical sleep aids, wind-up music boxes, oscillating fans, rotating star wheels, little machines meant to simulate the comforting predictability of nature. Some even designed ceiling-mounted candle reflectors that spun gently while casting sleepy, circular shadows. Across the room, historians still argue whether these devices actually worked or simply gave people something to believe in besides chamomile and blind faith. You stare at the clock, tick, tock. Your eyes soften, your breath slows, your brain, filled with operatic thoughts about grocery lists and personal failure, has quieted into gentle questions. Like, how many sheep does it take to hypnotize a duck? You feel yourself slide, not fall, just ... slide. That slow mental slope where thoughts stretch, time unspools, and corners soften. Your pillow feels like moss. The mattress hums faintly with your pulse. You blink, once and then you sneeze again, violently. Tick, clunk. The oscillator topples from the bedside, thuds against the floorboards, and rolls beneath the bed. Somewhere down there, it continues ticking, but now it sounds like it's sulking. Your eyelids snap open, your back, fully conscious, heart slightly startled, nose tingling. Clock banished, it's fine. You're fine. You fish it out with a broom handle, set it upright, and consider rewinding it. but something in your body feels less patient now, as though your organs are voting against further nonsense. Still, it almost worked. You're convinced of that. You crawl back into bed. The pillow is somehow colder than before. The blanket has twisted itself into a Victorian knot, and now one of your toes is permanently exposed to the cruel night air. You lie still, try again. Sleep machines, though, even the ridiculous ones, because in a world where every other solution involved opium, vinegar, or light electrocution, you'll get there. Don't worry, the idea of a ticking brass thing lulling you to rest almost feels wholesome. Or maybe you're just tired enough to believe in anything. Your breathing slows again. Your spine unclenches by half a vertebra. Tick, tock, maybe. Asterisk sleep still won't come. You've drunk the lettuce soup. You've worn the linen weights. You've flirted with mercury drops and stared down a hypnotic brass machine until it fell off the bed in a petty act of sabotage. The night, meanwhile, stretches on with the smug patience of a butler waiting for a tip. So you reach once again for something to rescue you from this half-waking limbo. A book, not a thrilling novel. Tonight, no pirates, no swooning lovers, no heroic orphans with improbable luck. Tonight calls for something far more soporific. A sleep manual, borrowed from the local lending library and written by someone who once taught ethics at a small school for clergymen's sons. Its title is confident. The Mindful Pillow, an exploration of sleep, morality, and proper mattress hygiene. It opens, rather severely, with the sentence, "It is not uncommon for overthinkers, the intellectually burdened, and women with passions to suffer wakeful conditions." So that sets the tone. You lie back, book open on your chest, the pages slightly crisped from someone else's candle wax. The text recommends a strict bedtime of precisely 9:07 p.m., followed by a ritual walk backwards for no fewer than 63 paces to trick the brain into retroactive fatigue. You wonder if the author himself ever tried this. You continue reading. There's an entire chapter devoted to night airs. The Victorian belief that certain breezes, particularly those that drift in from graveyards or marshes, carry vapors, capable of disturbing sleep and summoning unsettling dreams. You're instructed to sleep only with windows facing due north, and to hang lavender-stuffed sachets in the four corners of your room, forming what the book calls a soothing square of scented intention. You look around. Your room faces a bakery and a lamplighter's quarters, and you own exactly one sachet, which smells like regret and dried soup bones. The next chapter is more direct. It lists known causes of insomnia in 1870, including tight corsets, disrupted dinner schedules, excessive exposure to Greek tragedies, improper hat storage. Thinking too hard after 6 p.m., there is an entire paragraph blaming gaslighting, both in the literal sense of the street lamps flickering outside your window, and metaphorically suggesting that those who are routinely contradicted by their domestic companions are more prone to sleeplessness. Historians still argue whether this is the first recorded instance of the term being used in both senses at once. You read on. The author describes a routine called the 5 F's feet: food, friction, fabric, and forgiveness. It's unclear what friction refers to, and you're slightly afraid to ask. Fabric involves inspecting all garments for hidden buttons that might irritate the skin. Forgiveness, you're told, must be offered nightly to those who have wronged you, even if they don't deserve it. You stare at the ceiling and wonder how many Victorian people lay awake, teeth clenched, trying to forgive their noisy neighbors or the baker who gave them the wrong crumpet. You attempt to few of the manual's suggestions. You rearrange your bedding in accordance with the north-facing dignity rule. You even walk backward 5 paces. You don't have room for 63. Unless you include the stairs, and frankly, that feels dangerous. You whisper, "I forgive you," toward the ceiling, just in case anyone in particular is listening. Still awake, still surrounded by the slow tick of the failed sleep machine, the aftertaste of nerve syrup, and the faint rustle of wind. Slipping beneath the window frame, you turn the page. There's a section on how to properly yawn oneself into rest. It includes specific jaw movements and a diagram that looks vaguely like a snake dislocating its head. You try it. You succeed in making yourself tear up, but the actual yawn escapes you like a thief with no conscience. Then comes a list of bedtime readings to avoid: Shakespeare, unless edited for tranquility; newspapers, due to political overexcitement; cookbooks, because they may cause pre-supper regret; travel guides, which provoke longing and geographical unrest. The preferred alternatives include old sermons with vague conclusions, pamphlets on water purity, catalogues of doorknob types. You briefly wonder if staring at a list of doorknobs might lull you into unconsciousness. It's not the worst idea you've heard tonight. You place the book down, the cover soft with age, and marginalia. One note in the corner simply reads, "Did not work. Try gin." You stare at the ceiling again. The room feels quiet now, like it's waiting for you to give up or give in. And just maybe, you are asterisk. Your ceiling is now your closest confidant. You've stared at it long enough to memorize every crack, every fading swirl in the plaster, and you're starting to imagine faces in the shadows. Nothing sinister, just a slightly disappointed pigeon and a judgy old lady in a bonnet. Sleep, meanwhile, continues to play hard to get. You sigh, then sit up. Again. The room groans with you floorboards, bed frame, joints, soul. And that's when it strikes you. You are not alone in your suffering. You remember hearing about them spoken in hushed tones behind curtains and beneath the soot-choked eaves. The midnight airwalkers. Victorian London was home to thousands of insomniacs who simply gave up and went outside, not to do anything, in particular just to walk, breathe, and try to shake the restlessness loose like dust from a rug. You throw on your coat. Again, you've stopped, buttoning it properly. Fashion is no longer your concern. You step out into the street. It's quiet. Not silent. London is never truly silent, but there's a particular hush that descends on the hours between bakers and bootblacks, when even the fog seems half asleep. The air smells like smoke, damp stone, and last night's potato pie. You begin to walk. No destination, just forward. You pass a woman sitting on her stoop, knitting something unraveling. She nods. Another walker. You pass a man in a nightcap and slippers, pacing beside a row of flower pots, as if awaiting news from the Crimean front. The city feels different like this. Fewer rules, fewer eyes, as though time itself has loosened its tie and put its feet up. Midnight air walking was surprisingly common among the sleepless Victorians. Some considered it a form of treatment, a way to reset the body by exposing it to brisk, bracing cold and aimless motion. Others saw it as dangerous, warning that wandering about under moonbeams could lead to madness, vapors, or sudden inspiration. Historians still argue whether this practice was therapeutic or just a social coping mechanism for people too proud to admit they were struggling. Some diaries refer to it as a night constitutional. Others call it avoiding the pillow demon. You feel both are valid. You walk on, past sleeping dogs, past chimneys exhaling like tired dragons, past the silent silhouette of a handsome cab parked at an angle that suggests either drunkenness or an unfinished story. Your thoughts soften with each step. Not gone, but stretched like dough before it rises. The endless replays of today's embarrassments fade. Your mind quiets enough to hear your own breath, your own heartbeat. You pause beneath a gas lamp. The glass is fogged from the inside. You reach out, touch the iron post. It's cold, solid, real. You think of others, like you, in other parts of the city, all pacing the night, invisible to each other, connected only by exhaustion and a faint, ridiculous hope that the fresh air might press reset on their nerves. There's something comforting in the thought that you are not singular in your sleeplessness, that somewhere out there, another night walker just passed someone selling hot chestnuts to no one, that another pair of feet just crunched through a puddle and startled a fox. You take a longer route back home. You move slower, not because you're tired, but because tiredness no longer feels like something you can chase. It will find you when it wants to. The door creaks as you let yourself back in. Your room welcomes you with its usual chill, its cabbagey shadows, its perfectly undisturbed bed. You lie down again, this time no bricks, no clocks, no syrups, just the memory of cold night air in your lungs and footsteps fading gently into fog. And for a moment, just a moment, to almost don't mind being awake, sweeps a grey velvet hour that doesn't belong to either night or morning. You're lying flat, limbs like damp laundry, when another idea creeps into your brain. A ridiculous one, whispered from some dusty corner of a medical pamphlet you once skimmed in the back of a dentist's waiting room. Electrotherapy, of course. Because if lettuce soup and walking backwards in your nightgown haven't done the trick, surely a mild electrical current coursing through your body, like a polite lightning bolt, will lull you into unconscious bliss. Victorian doctors, ever-eager pioneers of the possibly helpful, probably harmful, were firm believers in the curative powers of electricity. They developed portable machines with names like the nervous system invigorator or Dr. Perkins' patent galvanic friend, which is the sort of name that tells you absolutely nothing and everything at once. You, being a man of curiosity and questionable judgment, happen to have access to one. It's not yours, exactly. It belongs to your cousin Gerald, who left it with you after declaring it not strong enough for gout but perfect for nerves. You retrieve it from under the bed, where it has sat since last spring like a sulking beetle in its little wooden case. Inside is a crank, a pair of copper terminals, and a hand-drawn diagram of where not to apply it: ears, nostrils, anything theological. You attach the leather straps to your feet. Why feet? Well, the manual says, for improved circulation, emotional clarity, and general serenity of the lower extremities, which, frankly, sounds achievable. You take a deep breath, turn the crank slowly, and jolt. It's not painful, more of a buzz, like being politely nudged by a swarm of bees that attended finishing school. Your toes twitch, your ankles hum. One of your legs involuntarily performs a little waltz in the sheets. Victorian electrotherapy wasn't just for sleep, by the way. Oh no, it was marketed as a cure for melancholy, impotence, moral indecisiveness, and wandering womb, a diagnosis that now lives only in the Museum of Bad Ideas. Historians still argue whether these machines ever helped anyone or simply gave people a feeling of doing something, anything, to regain control over their own bodies. You crank again, slower this time. The buzz returns, but with less drama. Your foot lifts slightly, then sinks. You feel your body, paying attention. It's not relaxing, but it's no longer clenching either. You are, in a way, distracted from your sleeplessness. And in this game, distraction might be the best you can hope for. But just as you begin to settle into the rhythm, buzz, twitch, say something strange happens. You smell toast, not real toast. Phantom toast, the kind of smell that isn't there. You freeze. Is it a stroke? Is it Gerald's faulty wiring? Is it simply your brain making small talk with your senses because it's bored? You stop cranking, the buzz fades. The smell does. Not you sniff the air like a confused bloodhound. Still toast, no fire, no crumbs. Just invisible breakfast, delivered by the mischievous spirit of bad decisions. You remove the straps, decide, with some dignity, that perhaps electrotherapy can wait until the Victorian version of customer service arrives. Which is to say, never. You lie back, eyes open, muscles tingling faintly. You're not asleep, but you're also not asleep. You've entered that state only the truly exhausted ever find, where time wobbles, and your brain begins composing short letters to deceased monarchs without your permission. You let the current drain from your limbs, like the last echo of a lightning storm far, far away, and somewhere deep in your gut you hear the ghost of a burp. Lettuce soup, still clinging to relevance. You close your eyes again, buzz, gone, toast, lingering, sleep maybe. Asterisk, you're still horizontal, still conscious, and still mildly suspicious that your brain has started playing games with your olfactory system. The smell of phantom toast has faded, thankfully, though now it's been replaced by an equally ghostly whiff of boiled soxa scent that belongs to no meal and yet seems right at home here. You've officially entered the hallucinatory stage of Victorian insomnia, and now, as the sky outside begins to acquire the faintest blush of pre-dawn indifference, a new remedy floats into your mind, this one whispered about in hushed tones by distant relatives and bizarrely enthusiastic matrons at church fundraisers. Sleep by diet, yes, not just soup or syrup, but an entire nutritional regime designed specifically to encourage drowsiness and banish excessive internal excitability. You drag yourself to the kitchen, which, in your case, is a narrow strip of floor between your stove and your laundry bucket. There, amid a clutter of Old Spice tins and a cracked sugar jar, lies your last hope, a Victorian sleep biscuit. You'd baked them yourself 2 days ago after reading a tract titled The Digestive Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Comestibles. They were described as hearty, flavorless, and deeply soporific, and they are exactly that. You take one bite, it tastes like the color beige. If beige had a texture, it would be this dry, reluctant, and morally disappointed in itself. Ingredients include oat flour, powdered fennel, overcooked barley, and a suspicious amount of lettuce pulp, which you now realize has been stalking you across the entire evening. The theory, widely accepted in 19th century medical circles, was that certain foods could either stimulate or suppress the nervous fires of the body. Cheese, onions, and cured meats, dangerous stimulants. Lettuce, oats, and water-soaked toast, nature's sedatives. There were entire pamphlets on the subject, often filled with calming recipes such as boiled milk with nutmeg, stewed celery in laudanum broth, nap soup made from turnip rinds and whisper-thin carrot slices. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of these dishes came from their nutritional chemistry, or the sheer spiritual defeat caused by eating them. Some sleep guides insisted that chewing slowly exactly 32 times per bite was crucial. You try this now. It doesn't help. Your jaw simply begins to resent you. You eat half the biscuit. The rest disintegrates mid-chew and is respectfully returned to the plate as a pile of crumbs and regret. Still, there's something oddly reassuring about this approach. Food as medicine, or at least food as ritual. Because what these Victorian routines lacked in science, they often made up for in structure. And structure, as any sleepless mind knows, is a blessed thing. A path to walk when the fog closes in. You wash the biscuit down with a tepid mug of barley water, a drink so unassuming that even your tongue seems uncertain it happened. Then, gently, you pad back to bed. The mattress groans beneath you like a pensioner telling a long story. You rearrange the pillows again, and you think this was someone's whole life, not just yours, but thousands of people every night, climbing into beds with rope supports and straw ticking, trying every dusty trick in the apothecary's book just to win a few hours of unconsciousness. Some of them wrote letters at 2 a.m., some prayed, some walked until their boots gave up. Some tried brandy, others quoted scripture until their eyes crossed. Some recited Latin poetry. Some, if you believe the more eccentric diaries, sang lullabies to their own knees. And now here you are, propped up on one elbow, feeling vaguely letter-scented, unsure whether your current state is restfulness, stupor, or the early symptoms of becoming a fog spirit. You close your eyes, not because you expect sleep to come, but because, frankly, your eyelids are tired of being open. They're unionized now, and they're staging a protest. The room still smells, faintly, of biscuits. Outside, a bird clears its throat. Maybe, just maybe, this time, you dream. Maybe, you're not quite sure. It's the sort of dream that doesn't commit more suggestion than story. A vague soup of sensations. Walking down a hallway that feels like your childhood attic, except it's lined with soup bowls and someone's playing a lute. There's a goat in a waistcoat. He seems to know something you don't. Then a knock. Not in the dream, a real one. Your eyes snap open. Knock again. You glance at the window. Still dark, but there's a faint light leaking into the Skydon's first bored yawn. The city hasn't quite woken up, but it's thinking about it. Another knock, firm, measured, Victorian. You shuffle out of bed with all the grace of a dropped pudding and open the door a cautious few inches. Standing there is your neighbour, Mrs. Trottle, wrapped in a shawl, hair in curlers, expression stern but not unkind. She holds a teacup in one hand and a folded bit of newspaper in the other. "I heard pacing," she says flatly, "and thought you might be having one of those nights." Again. You nod, slowly. She nods back, just once. No judgment, just recognition. She holds out the newspaper clipping. It's titled, "Sleep the Victorian Way, Tips from the Age of Patience." Underneath is a half-smudged list of instructions involving goose-fat poultices, lukewarm ale, and something cryptically labelled sock therapy. Better things to do. You close the door, set the teacup on the windowsill, sniff. Yes, definitely real. Maybe even fresh. There's something about it that smells. Hopeful, you settle back into bed. Carefully now. No bricks, no machinery, just warm ceramic between your hands and the faint crinkle of the newspaper in your lap. You read through the clipping. Some of it is nonsense, obviously. Kiss a hedgehog at midnight to frighten away worry spirits is unlikely to win medical approval, but other entries are oddly comforting. Wrap your feet in flannel. Tell them they are safe. Stroke your own hair and think kindly of yourself. Repeat this mantra. The world will spin whether I sleep or not. You take a sip. The warmth travels down your throat and settles somewhere in your chest, like a very polite houseguest. You breathe in deeply, and for the first time in what feels like centuries, your shoulders drop, not dramatically, just enough. Victorians, for all their odd cures and dubious science, understood something about the ceremony of sleep. It wasn't just about closing your eyes. It was about preparing, about telling the body, in no uncertain terms, that it was safe to rest, even if your mattress had straw poking through it, even if your neighbor's goat was giving you the evil eye, even if you'd accidentally electrocuted your foot an hour ago. You wrap the shawl tighter around you. Another sip. Outside, the city exhales. Somewhere down the street, a delivery boy yawns and drops a crate of apples. You hear them rolling. One bumps against your door like a sleepy knock. You smile, not a big one, just a private, inward thing. The kind of smile you reserve for yourself when no one else is watching. The tea's half finished now. You set the cup aside. Slide back under the covers. Tuck your feet in. Pull the blanket up to your chin. You remember one last line from the article. Imagine you are a stone in a quiet river. Let the water pass over you. You do not need to move. You are already enough. You do. And as your eyes close, not from effort, not from frustration, but from simple ease, you realize you may finally be asleep. Or at least, you're no longer trying not to be. Asterisk, you wake up slowly. Not dramatically, no startled gasp, no flailing of limbs, no sudden realization that you've slept through a royal engagement. Just an awareness. The gentle shift from dreaming to being. The way a boat might drift closer to shore without anyone noticing. Light filters into your room. Real light this time. Honest daylight, pale and soft, warming the walls like a quiet apology for everything that came before. You stretch, and for the first time in what feels like a decade, nothing hurts. While your foot tingles slightly, possibly still resentful, over the electrotherapy. But otherwise, you feel as though you've been removed from the oven just before crisping. Warm, intact, maybe even rested. You sit up, the teacup still rests on the windowsill. Empty now, except for a faint ring at the bottom. You nod at it, like an old friend. Your bedding is tangled, but comfortingly so, like you've done battle with the night and finally emerged on the right side of the mattress. Outside, London hums. Not the frantic rush of midday, just the quiet industry of a city doing its morning things. Horses clipping down cobbled lanes, bakery doors creaking open, someone shouting mildly about a missing coat. You move slowly, reverently, as though you've just returned from a very peculiar pilgrimage. And in a way, you have not. Victorian sleep was never just sleep. It was an ordeal, a performance, a medical mystery tangled in lace and laudanum. And now, having tried nearly every questionable cure available to you, short of being slapped with a fish, which some texts did recommend, albeit metaphorically, you find yourself wondering, did any of it help? The soup, the linen bricks, the night air, and electrocution, and biscuits made from botanical despair. You'll never really know, but something shifted. Maybe it wasn't the remedy. Maybe it was the ritual. Historians still argue whether Victorian sleep rituals were genuinely effective or simply elaborate forms of placebo. But that misses the point, because when the world feels unmanageable, and your mind won't stop turning like an anxious hamster on a wheel greased with tax returns and unresolved guilt, even the illusion of control is worth chasing. You rise. Wrap yourself in the blanket like a toga of small triumphs, and then, absurdly, you remember something else. An old woman somewhere in a train station, years ago, once swore that rubbing a slice of cold potato on your temples could cure insomnia. You laughed at the time. You were 12. She smelled like soap and mothballs and mysterious certainty. You check your cupboard. One potato, slightly wrinkled, entirely innocent. You slice it, rub it gently on each temple. It's cold, silly, soothing. You begin to laugh, not a big laugh, nothing raucous, just a quiet exhale through your nose, the sound of someone realizing that they've survived themselves. There are people now, modern, well-meaning people, who say we've solved sleep, that there are apps and supplements and regulated lighting temperatures to shepherd us into slumber like lambs into a luxury barn. But somehow, you think you prefer this, the long-winded, deeply human mess of it all, the midnight pacing, the weird tonics, the utterly sincere belief in backwards walking and star maps and potatoes, the relentless attempt to make peace with the fact that sometimes your body forgets how to rest. You feel tired again, but not in the bad way, not in the brittle, eyelid-witching way of last night. No, this is the good kind, the slow, golden kind of tired. The maybe I'll nap just for the joy of it kind. You wrap yourself tighter in your blanket, shuffle back to bed, and sink into the mattress without ceremony. And this time without soup, syrup, or even strategy, simply doze effortlessly, and in the far, far distance of your quieting mind, you hear a goat in a waistcoat say, finally, you dream again. Not of goats this time, although you suspect they'll return eventually. Perhaps with monocles, but of linen. Miles and miles of gently rippling linen, the kind used in hospital wards, laundries, and the private bedrooms of those who took sleep so seriously they commissioned their own pillow philosophies. It wraps around you in the dream, not tight just, present, weighty in that strangely comforting way. A steady, even pressure across your chest and legs, as if someone's folded a warm book across you and said, there, that's better. When you wake, if this counts as waking, you realize it's not just a dream. You're under your linen weight blanket, of course. You'd tucked it away days ago, swearing it off after the first night left you feeling like a pressed flower. But at some point last night, between the tea, the newspaper clippings, and the ceremonial potato, you must have dragged it back out and flopped beneath it like a sardine beneath a particularly judgmental net. And you know what? It's working, or at least it's doing something. You feel held, contained, less like a collection of disjointed limbs and thoughts, and more like a singular being again. Victorians didn't invent weighted blankets, but they certainly refined the idea of sleep through pressure. There were manuals, naturally, describing how to fold and layer bedclothes in specific geometric patterns. Some recommended tucking in the corners with military precision to simulate moral compression. Others advised placing soothing weights over specific body parts, particularly the chest, the calves, and, oddly, the left elbow. You once read about a woman who slept with 2 bricks swung on each hip hand, claimed it gave her dreams of being buried in soft snow. Historians still argue whether these practices helped regulate the nervous system or simply created a sense of order in an otherwise chaotic world. Some scholars suggest the linen weight method mimicked the sensation of being back in the womb. Others say it was just another way to avoid falling out of bed. You stretch, but only a little. The linen resists, gently, like a lullaby sung by gravity. For the first time in ages, your breathing feels intentional, the kind of breathing people write poetry about, slow, even soft at the edges. Your chest rises and falls like it knows what it's doing without supervision. You lie there for a while, not asleep, not entirely awake. The linen holds you like a promise, the kind of promise that doesn't need to be spoken, the kind your body remembers even when your mind is full of soup and street lamps. You glance at the window. Morning is officially here now, brighter, fuller, unapologetically real. But the world outside doesn't demand anything of you. Not yet, it will wait. For once, it's letting you move at your own pace. Your thoughts drift lazily. You remember the woman from the article who once claimed her linen weights not only cured her insomnia, but inspired her to write poetry about her curtains. You wonder, briefly, if you're about to do the same. You look over. They do look, poetic, in a dusty, underappreciated kind of way. Maybe later. For now, the only lines you care about are the ones your blanket has pressed gently into your arm. They feel like medals. You've survived another night. You've collected all the ridiculous, earnest, deeply human ways people have tried to trick their bodies into rest. And somewhere between the soup, the biscuit, the electricity, and the backward walk, something gave way. Asterisk, are you here? Comment for next 4 of story. If you like this story, please like the channel for more asterisk. Thank you for watching.